Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have suffered their biggest media attack yet, with Julie Burchill, the famous British columnist, totally going to town on the pair in the latest edition of the highly regarded conservative UK periodical The Spectator, the oldest magazine in the world. Now, Brittany from the Royal News Network joins me now. Brittany, before we go into this article, I think it's really important we set this up because Julie Burchill is a really interesting character when it comes to Meghan Markle. She wasn't one of these people who was always against Meghan. In fact, for years and years and years, she defended Meghan. I would argue she was actually defending the indefensible at times, but she has turned, which is such an interesting phenomenon, Brittany, that we're seeing with so many, not just major media figures and columnists, but actually publications, websites, magazines.
Yeah, it's really true, especially when it comes to like recently Newsweek has been sort of an interesting outlier because it used to be very pro Harry and Meghan. Jack Royston is sort of one of the main authors. Now he's sort of started tilting more against them, particularly when it comes to the African parks situation. There's another columnist from the Daily Mail who sort of switched sides and goes, okay, I've had enough. It was actually over the red dress that Meghan Markle wore in October that she initially wore a couple years ago. And that's, I think, one of the worst dresses ever constructed. And it seems like a lot of people at this point, they're sort of getting fed up. They're like, okay, we've given them a lot of leeway, but Harry and Meghan still haven't really proven their worth, I think, because when it comes to sort of the future world they're trying to build for themselves, like in the entertainment industry, they've sort of failed in a lot of ways. And the failure begets failure. And it's just harder and harder to be pro Harry and Meghan, I think, in many ways, because it's hard to ignore all the flops that they've had.
Well, indeed, what's so astonishing about this column, Brittany, is that she actually believes that this year has been worse for the royal family in terms of Harry and Meghan than 2023, which is quite something, but actually even worse than the late Queen's Annus Horribilis in 1992, which of course featured the divorce of two of her children.
All right, folks, let's get right into it. Julie Burchill, a former supporter of Meghan Markle, has done a complete 180, and she's not holding back. In a brutal article for The Spectator, she slams Meghan's new lifestyle brand and exposes the truth about why the Sussexes are losing support at record speed. Now, here's what makes this so interesting. Julie wasn't always anti-Meghan. In fact, she used to defend her. But now, she's saying Meghan's brand, American Riviera Orchard, is a total flop, and she's calling out Harry and Meghan's entire Hollywood strategy as a disaster. Someone like Julie Burchill has turned against them. You know things are bad.
So look, let me read to you what the great Julie Burchill has said. She's actually one of my favorite columnists in the world. She has a way of writing which is particularly spot on. But this brutal takedown of Harry and Meghan from one of their former allies just seems really significant to me. So Julie Burchill writes, 2024 has amazingly been even worse for Harry and Meghan. For starters, their supporters now look like bullies, no matter how much they present Meghan as a victim. Meghan's obsession with Catherine, Princess of Wales, already seemed like a case of sour grapes. But when it transpired that the princess was absent from public duties due to chemotherapy for cancer, Meghan's supporters still spread nasty rumours. Perhaps finally acknowledging that her acting career is over, Meghan has cooked up a lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, which sounds like a urinal cake. Entirely unsurprisingly, American Riviera Orchard has failed to take off. While people don't need to like you for your lifestyle brand to be a success, see Paltrow G and Stuart M, they do have to be slightly envious of you and think, I wish I had what she's got. No one wants what Meghan's got, except perhaps possibly poor plastic-faced Omid Scobie. Then she moves on to Harry, Brittany, and she's just as scathing. She says, meanwhile, Prince Harry is faring no better. The man who once proudly wore medals earned from a decade in the army now travels the world collecting Toy Town tributes like a baffled child playing at being a grown-up. At the start of the year, he was inducted into something called Living Legends of Aviation, which sounds like a hipster pop group. He ended the year in the Titan category of Time magazine's list of 100 most influential leaders driving business to real climate action. Helpfully, in October, the Express totted up the number of air miles gobbled up by Harry and Meghan thus far this year, which amounted to 82,908 for just work events. The figure does not include internal flights on their visit to Nigeria and Colombia, nor private holidays. This equates to more than 3 trips around the world. That's some climate action. And 2 things this year, Julie Birchall goes on, have made Harry appear not merely daft, but callous. The first was when he accepted, against the wishes of the dead man mothers, the Pat Tillman Award from excellence and sports performance. Tillman was an American football player who gave up his £3 million contract to enlist in the army. Meanwhile, there are ongoing horror stories emerging from the wildlife charity African Parks in the Republic of Congo, where Harry is a board member. The charity is investigating allegations that guards working for it have been involved in the rape and torture of Indigenous people. Julie Birchall concludes, I doubt whether the Sussexes can turn their prospects around. Just as a marriage can survive loathing but not contempt, so it goes with public perception of the famous. We don't even hate them anymore. She writes, these drama queens could probably find actual hate into fuel for their persecution complex. We just think that they're ridiculous. And Brittany, I just thought, wow, not only did she sum it up perfectly, to think this came from a former ally of Meghan Markle in the British media.
Yep, you heard that right. She literally said Meghan's brand sounds like a bathroom freshener. And honestly, she's not wrong. Because let's be real, who is actually buying into this American Riviera nonsense? Meghan wants people to see her as the next Gwyneth Paltrow or Martha Stewart. But the problem is, nobody wants what she's selling. This is where things get really interesting. It's not just Julie Birchall calling them out. It's the entire media landscape shifting. Even outlets like Newsweek, which used to praise Harry and Meghan, are now calling them out for their failures. Why? Because people are finally seeing through the act. Think about it. When Meghan first entered the royal scene, the press was obsessed with her. She was the fresh, modern face of the monarchy. But now, it's all backfired. Every media outlet that once defended her is now exposing her. And let's be honest, this didn't happen by accident. People are waking up to the pattern.
Oh man, it's so brutal what she said, but it's so true as well. Like Meghan Markle has had a series of failures. Like if you go back and look at American Riviera Orchard, it said in People magazine, I think multiple times, oh, it's going to be ready in the spring. It's going to be this summer, then the fall. And then now it's sometime in 2025. And Harry just looks increasingly deluded. He goes on media rants that he's saying things where you realize he's not really aware of anything that's actually going on. And I think this is a year where they just look increasingly inept. It's hard to ignore the fact that not only do they not know what they're doing, they either don't have good handlers around them or they have just abysmal instincts when it comes to what their future should hold. And it's hard to ignore that failure. It's hard to get behind them at this point, especially with the callousness of obviously what happened to Catherine. Meghan's stands, you could say in many ways, the Sussex squad going after her so badly while she was recovering from surgery and then cancer. All these sorts of things make Harry and Meghan, I think, look terrible. The people they attract, and you could call it their fan base, are sort of equally terrible. And it's led to just this catastrophic, I think, collapse of their support over this year. And they go around and they try to look all important, but everybody knows they're not really that important. They can't go to Nigeria and actually help Nigeria or Colombia. They're just there on essentially a glorified vacation, sort of faking the life they claim to hate. And I think that hypocrisy is what really grates on people. They told us how terrible the monarchy is, how horrible it is to be a royal. And yet they're still trying to recreate that life after. And it's just like, what is the point of that? Obviously, you didn't hate it. You just hated the aspects of it where you weren't either in control or you weren't the star. Those are the aspects of being royal that you hated. And I think another point too is that when people look at Meghan Markle, they think, well, you had the epitome of influence and power being a member of the royal family, and you gave that up for Hollywood, really? And I think as time goes on, people are more and more picking that up, going, royalty is really where you should have stayed. You gave up everything, really, for just sort of this lowbrow existence over here. And I think people have just a really hard time connecting to Harry and Meghan anymore, and their support seems to dwindle by the day.
It really does. It really does. And as a result, Brittany, we see further reporting on the state of the marriage from Radar Online, which has been on this, right? It has been on this for a long time. And I've been on this for a long time, in fairness. So let me take you through this, Brittany. Radar Online reporting that Prince Harry is angry and frustrated at how his new life has turned out. Sources have revealed that 5 years, of course, since Megxit, he feels like he was missold the idea. Now, this is what the source tells Radar Online. Meghan sold their move to America as a way for their family to be happy, free, and relatively normal. But that doesn't seem to be the case for them and their kids at all. It's almost as if they, as a family, are living like Rapunzel in her tower. Even the locals in Montecito are puzzled. Archie and Lily are rarely seen with Meghan or Harry at local events. He feels like he's been missold a life. Plus, he and Meghan are also leading pretty much separate lives. It's like they are an estranged couple living under the same roof.
Every time things go wrong, Harry and Meghan blame someone else. First it was the royal family. Then it was the British press. Now, even their Hollywood friends and business partners are apparently out to get them. At what point do we stop and say, maybe it's not everyone else? Maybe it's them. Now let's talk about Meghan's big comeback plan. Her new lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard. Sounds fancy, right? Well, not really. Because the truth is nobody cares. Here's the thing. Successful lifestyle brands work because the creator has an aspirational image. Think Gwyneth Paltrow. People might not love her, but they believe she actually lives that goop lifestyle. Meghan, she spent the last few years playing the victim, suing newspapers, complaining about the royals, and alienating Hollywood. That's not the image of a glamorous lifestyle icon. It's the image of someone who's bitter, burned out, and desperate for a rebrand.
Brittany, what do you make of it?
Well, Dan, I've always been under the thought that when it came to this whole Megxit situation, Meghan really sold Harry on the idea that she was this big Hollywood star, that she had these connections, and that if he just went along with her idea that it would be a smash success, that she could help them make so much money, he wouldn't have to rely on his dad and his brother anymore, all these sorts of things. And so he went along with the dream that she spun for him, only to learn pretty quickly that even when it comes to being in Hollywood and being a producer, she has no clue what she's doing either. And they have gone from challenge to challenge. Obviously, he couldn't even get a Spotify program off the ground. They tried one together. That sort of was pretty bad. She did her own. That failed. And so they missed out on that entire revenue stream. And then you have Netflix. They've had one success, two massive flops. Polo, which he inexplicably refuses to promote or have anybody else from the program promote, is probably going to flop as well. And so you just have this series of failures and failures and failures. And it's hard to imagine that that's not impacting the marriage, especially from the perspective, I think, of that she sold him this vision that just never came to reality. They live a very cloistered life. Yeah, the kids maybe get to do some things that Harry wanted them to do, whatever normalcy he decided worked for him, because that's the thing. Normal is different to every people. My quote unquote normal life would not be the same normal life as Catherine and William and their family. Everybody has their different level of normal. So, what was Harry seeking? I'm not quite sure, but I imagine he did not get his Hollywood dream and that he's desperately trying to figure out what to do now. And so is she. And they're basically banking on American Riviera Orchard making them hundreds of millions of dollars because at this point, they don't really have anything else going forwards unless Harry's going to start making charities pay for him to go show up and promote
Well, I wouldn't put
whatever
that past
program
him.
they want.
I mean, I wouldn't put that past him to some degree.
Yep.
I'm sure he'll get his expenses covered, put it that way, in a David Beckham style way. However, you are right. He seems to have effectively given up on working. I mean, which I just find so hilarious, given the whole reason he wanted to leave the royal family was so that he could work, was so that he could pursue commercial ventures. But as you say, he was sold a dream by Meghan, didn't realize actually that, you know what? As much as we might look down on Hollywood stars, and believe me, I very often do, right? Because they can be woke nightmares. But Americans work hard, Brittany. Americans work bloody hard. And most Americans who succeed in the entertainment industry have a good work ethic. Look at Tom Cruise, for example, a guy who, to this day, completes all of his own stunts. What the past 5 years has shown is that Meghan sold Harry a dream, which was that you're going to be able to make lots and lots of money just by being you, just by turning up as you. But that's how royal life works. It's not how commercial life works. It's not how Hollywood life works. Yes, Harry had to turn up, but he also had to record, he had to come up with concepts, he had to come up with entertainment ideas, and he failed to do that. So I think he was absolutely missold the dream. I think he was manipulated by Meghan.
And surprise, surprise, people aren't buying it. Because at the end of the day, Meghan doesn't have a brand. She has a sob story. And nobody buys luxury candles from someone who's constantly complaining about their in-laws. Let's be real. This is not just about a failed brand launch. This is about the total collapse of the Sussexes' influence. 4 years they've cashed in on their royal titles. But now that people see through the act, their Hollywood dreams are falling apart.
The thing is, Brittany, though, if they hadn't been so selfish in terms of their lifestyle, the companies who they tricked into paying them so much money could have actually funded them for the rest of their lives. I find it astonishing that we're meant to feel sorry for a couple that have literally taken in hundreds of millions of dollars for failure. You know, called effing grifters by Spotify. They still had to pay the bill. No major hits for Netflix outside of their reality series trashing on the royal family. They still get all of the money, yet we're meant to feel sorry for them. Oh, and by the way, Harry's just taken £8 million from his great grandmother's estate. I mean, please, we should not feel sorry for these jokers at all. They didn't need to buy a house with 16 bathrooms, for example. They could have had a mansion in Montecito with 8 bathrooms. So I feel absolutely no sympathy or empathy for them for the situation that they've ended up in.
Me either, because the amount of money that they've had, the amount of content, like I think to myself, the amount of content I could have produced with the amount of money that they were given, it would have been a lot. It would have been, I have ideas going on endlessly, but Harry just wanted to coast. Meghan wanted to coast. And in America, we do respect a lot of hard work. We respect grit. We respect effort. And neither one of them put any of it in. And the failures that they've had are a complete reflection of their inability to not only just work, but work hard. And that is the reality that they're facing now, is increasingly dismal prospects for the future. And of course, the greatest indicator of failure will be if they have to give up that house at some point, because if they don't get all that money, they may not be able to set themselves up for the rest of their lives, and they'll have to downsize eventually, maybe.
This is what happens when you burn too many bridges. Meghan and Harry thought they could ditch the royal family and become Hollywood superstars. But they underestimated one thing. Hollywood is just as ruthless as the palace. And when you stop being useful, they drop you. Netflix gave them a $100 million deal, and they still haven't delivered anything of value. Spotify canceled their contract, and even Oprah, yes, Oprah, seems to be distancing herself. That's not just a bad business move, it's a PR disaster. So what happens next? Can Meghan and Harry turn this around? Or is this the beginning of the end? At this point, even their most loyal allies are jumping ship. And unless they completely reinvent themselves, they're looking at a future where nobody cares anymore. At the end of the day, this is what happens when you build a career on controversy instead of talent. The question is, does Harry even realize it? Or is he too deep in the bubble to see what's happening? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.